Hi everyone, welcome along to another episode of Giant Sisters with Joe Brothers. I'm excited to be with Associate Professor Siouxsie Wiles from the Bioluminescent Superbugs Lab of the University of Auckland. Dr Siouxsie Wiles describes herself as a microbiologist and bioluminescence enthusiast. Welcome, Siouxsie.
Thank you very much.
Now, we're talking in the Giant Sisters series a lot about the power of intention. How did you design your life and career path, or did it just evolve?
Oh gosh, just evolved really. I guess I've been given some kind of amazing opportunities, and then also made some opportunities and made the most of some opportunities.
Yeah.
And it just feels like sort of one thing has sort of led to the next, really.
Wow. And how did you get involved in science and superbugs?
I sort of date it back to getting this really amazing book as a teenager called The Fireside Book of Deadly Diseases.
Right.
And I was reading all about plague and tuberculosis and things, and it just, it sort of struck me how amazing these little organisms were. And I also had a really, really good biology teacher at school, and so she was sort of sparking my interest in biology, and I was reading these books about infectious diseases, and so everyone sort of encouraged me to go off to university, and so I went off and did biology at university, and it was really when I was there that I started to learn more about microbiology, and then ended up specialising in infectious diseases.
Wow.
And it was really, being at university and then kind of doing an honours project, and then being told, you can do research, and science wasn't a career I really knew anything about. There were no scientists in my family. And in fact, I was almost the first in my family to go to university, but my dad ended up beating me.
Right.
He decided he wanted to go too. So yeah, I'd had family who supported me in the fact that I was curious about things, and so I said university is the place that you go if you're interested in learning, and then everything sort of really followed from that.
Well, fantastic. So I'm sure you've had some unique experiences in your career and the work that you're doing. Can you share one of those or some of those with us?
Oh gosh, unique experiences?
Glowing in the dark bugs?
Yeah, so I am interested in creatures that glow, and I guess my career has been to basically take the genes that creatures that naturally glow use to make light, and then put them into nasty bacteria. So it's not really, it sounds unique, but it's it's a thing that has been done by lots of different people.
Right.
In fact, when I was reading or learning all about this at university, I just thought, I'd love to do this, but by the time I get, I'll be ready to do some research, it'll all be done. And then, of course, that's sort of not really understanding how science works.
Yeah.
Because it's never done. It's always something interesting to do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess maybe one of the more unusual experiences for me was that I did my undergraduate degree, I went off and did my PhD. My PhD was basically making bacteria glow in the dark to study pollution. Yeah. And it was while I was doing my PhD that I thought I really like the stuff about glowing in the dark, but I'm not so keen on the pollution side. So I want to go back and do, I want to carry on basically doing science, but I want to do making nasty bacteria glow in the dark. And so I was very lucky to get my first postdoc position was essentially exactly that, was making the bacteria that causes tuberculosis glow.
Right.
But while I was there, I had this amazing boss who very quickly realized that I maybe wasn't quite the right sort of person to work with tuberculosis, because that organism is really, really slow growing.
Right.
And so I'd forget that I had done experiments, because you'd have to wait months and months for the results of them, and it was and so he sat me down one day and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, there's this particular technique that I'm really interested in, but it's not possible yet to do that with tuberculosis. And so he said, well, look where you are. Why don't you try and, why don't you see if you can make that happen?
Yeah.
And so, he kind of enabled me to really take the step that became what my career was. So I ended up genetically engineering this bacteria that someone else worked on in our building.
Right.
And still kind of work on that to this day. So
wow.
It was a really amazing experience where he allowed me to, follow my interests and my passions, which, not a lot of people will allow you to do, really.
True, that's fantastic. And it sounds a bit of synchronicity in there as well. And if we're thinking about embracing lessons, what challenges have you experienced has shaped you the most as a person?
Ooh, that's a really tough question. I think science is basically a road full of disappointments,
Right.
and so I think that possibly the reason I've been able to cope with those disappointments, then they really are quite crushing.
Right.
We spend so much of our time applying for money to do science. And I guess that was something I never really understood. When you see, and maybe this is, people see me as a scientist and I'm doing science, but actually the vast majority of my job is trying to raise the money to do the science.
Right.
And if I don't do that, then we don't do any science. But, there's not enough money in the pot to fund all the kind of cool science that people want to do. So most people will be disappointed most of the time.
Yeah.
And I never really understood that until I started getting all these crushingly disappointing blows.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe that's really hard. But learning how to cope with that rejection, because you end up having periods where you're like, oh my goodness, should I even be here? Am I any good at this?
Yes.
Are my ideas any good? And part of you just sort of got to go, actually, I think this is important.
Yeah.
You need to get validation from other places, I guess.
Yes.
And I wonder if perhaps if I wasn't quite so optimistic a person, I might have left a long time ago.
Right. So it really sounds like you've got great levels of resilience and optimism, which is helping you. That's fantastic.
It's really sad that they need it, though, I guess.
Yeah.
Because also, I guess the other thing about, certainly about science we know is that it's very biased.
Yeah.
And so there will be people who, will probably, people who succeed, who are no more worthy of succeeding than others,
yes.
but kind of succeed because all the sort of biases work in their favour. And so that's quite hard to deal with as well, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. Who do you draw your inspiration, or where do you draw your inspiration from for your creative process and the work that you do? Do you want to tell us a bit about your the luminescence pack that you invented that you and I met at that Kickstarter event, and you were looking at that? Would you like to sort of talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, again, this is I think what is invention really, other than sort of working on what you've sort of been exposed to or what others have done, right? Everything is a sort of series of reinventing almost.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, well, actually for many years, I've seen things that others have done around using glowing bacteria to kind of engage people with science. So there's an amazing guy in the UK called Simon Parkes who's done this sort of amazing photography and all sorts of things with so using glowing bacteria for all sorts of kind of public engagement sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so several years ago, I thought actually, I would really like to do more showing people this really cool, what bacteria can do that's really cool, because everyone's got this idea that, all bacteria are germs. And obviously I spent half my life talking about this kind of coming antibiotic crisis where, we're all going to die of superbug, but obviously not all bugs are bad.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have nice bread and we wouldn't have beer and all of these kinds of things without microbes. So we need to have a healthy level of respect for the really bad ones, but understand that, there are loads of good bugs, loads of indifferent bugs.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I isolated this glowing bacteria from the bum of a fish, which is a sort of a thing that you can find how to do on the internet. It's sort of an activity that people can do at home.
Right.
And then got this bacteria and started doing all sorts of kind of cool things, collaborating with artists, doing all sorts of stuff to sort of showcase this kind of cool bacteria. Yeah. And it was actually a couple of people in my lab who went on a commercialization workshop and then came back saying, right, we need to start a business, we need to be doing some cool stuff with this. We shouldn't just be limiting ourselves to the people we can reach physically. Like, when we go off and do events, we should be, thinking bigger than that. How can we engage teachers and school children? How can we do cool stuff that people would want to do at home? And so that led to the launch of this painting with bacteria kit that we've got.
Great.
Which is available online, but at the moment it's really only available in New Zealand because we are working on the shelf life of the kit, because at the moment it requires a living bacteria and that has a very limited life. Yeah. Hopefully we'll be able to resolve that at some point later this year.
Okay.
And so the idea was that basically it's a little kit that's got everything you need to make some petri dishes and then a little vial of bacteria, and basically you paint a picture using the bacteria, and wherever you paint is where the bacteria will grow, and wherever they grow, they will glow. And it's just, I kind of love how it sort of freaks people out, and that it's both a beautiful thing, but then they're also like, but it's bacteria. And of course we have this, idea that bacteria are all bad. So I like how it's challenging those kind of ideas for people.
And I'll find the link from you, and we'll include that in wherever I share the Giant Sisters podcast too.
Sure.
Sheroes and heroes, who are your role models or inspiration? Where do you draw that from?
All sorts of different places. I feel like I'm kind of going on a bit of a journey at the moment. I kind of have been brought up in this culture of that science is best, and there's a particular way to do it and everything. And moving to New Zealand and meeting many Māori researchers has really started to challenge that for me, understanding their difference in their culture and how they approach their science and stuff. So I've met lots of people. A really inspirational person for me is a geologist called Daniel Hikaroa, who has been telling me all these stories about the taniwha, which is sort of Māori monsters, and it turns out that a lot of these things are actually kind of stories about science. They're one of the stories he tells is of a I think it's a lizard that has this sort of swishing tail, and really that was a story about flooding and rivers and how rivers change their path. The swishing of the tail of the lizard is how the river changes when it floods and things. And so that was a story about where you built your houses or where you didn't build your houses and things. And so learning these kinds of things and how there are different that we have this sort of one idea of what doing science is, but actually there's lots of different ideas, and then also how you communicate it. There is not just the written paper, but there's sort of cultures that have oral traditions that can also sort of encapsulate that information. So that has been really interesting, having come from this background where it's like, no, it's this way. It's like, actually maybe it's not. So that's sort of really interesting. I'm surrounded by amazing people who inspire me in all sorts of different ways. I guess another one of them is a lovely lady that I work with who's a historian called Kate Hanna. And she's it's been, again, as a scientist who's at a very scientific kind of path, I haven't really had much to do with the humanities. She's been very instrumental in making me see that it's not science versus everything else, that actually the humanities, it's really, really important for putting a lot of science in context. And that, again, that has been sort of an amazing thing to be learning. And it's also made me really much more vocal about, so, for example, I work on trying to develop new antibiotics to save us all from these superbugs that are going to kill us all. But actually science can help us come up with new treatments and things. But science is not going to help us deal with underlying reasons why we might have really high rates of infectious diseases, right? Those are social issues. And so it's just sort of combining the science and the humanities that it's all of these things that are going to help us solve life's problems, not just one or the other. And so I'm kind of becoming much more vocal about, it's great that you are relying on us to do this work, but actually shouldn't we all be doing what we can to deal with some of the underlying social stuff? And lots of people don't like that. Lots of people don't like scientists sort of standing up and saying that thing. But actually, I'm not just a scientist. I'm a human being. I'm a citizen. And so why should I not feel that way about these things?
I like that approach that you have. Absolutely.
And I've actually just had a really lovely email today. I'm going to email the lady back and say thank you. So I gave a talk on Friday to a group, it's sort of a rural health group, so it had GPs and nurses and who are working in rural health. And I made my kind of we need to deal with these underlying issues kind of spiel at the end of my talk. But one of the GPs got up and basically started on a little bit of a rant, which was essentially, lots of people who are demanding antibiotics are, I think he called them demented women with snotty-nosed children.
Oh dear.
And so, what are we going to do about them? And I was just like, can I just stop you there for a moment?
Yes.
That demented woman, might be holding down 2 jobs, and she desperately needs to get those children back to school or daycare so that she can keep a roof on their head. So it's like, can we not make judgment calls like that about people, and maybe think about, what is it that she might need to support her, so that she understands why it's not appropriate to take antibiotics. And what I got was a lovely email from somebody specifically talking about that. And she says, thank you for championing the social cost of these issues.
That's great.
And refusing to accept the stereotype of nagging mothers. And I was like, oh, thank you.
Absolutely, Siouxsie. That's great.
So, which also brings me into another thing that I think is really important, and again, this sort of comes from Kate Hanna, this idea of kindness.
Yes.
So her motto is, everyone here is smart, so distinguish yourself by being kind. And it's something that's really making me kind of like, yes, we all remember the sort of the acts, those little acts of kindness that are kind of unexpected, but they change your day.
They do.
When somebody does something nice, it's like sort of, oh, that's really lovely.
Yeah.
And so that whole idea of kind of just doing that for people around you and sort of, paying it forward rather than being a grump all the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of trying to do that. I'm trying to be more kind because, my goodness, the world needs more kindness, doesn't it?
100% agree. Absolutely. 100% agree. And in terms of giving back, it sounds like, you by the work you do a lot. Do you get involved in any sort of community projects or helping individuals or mentoring and things like that?
I do a little bit of mentoring. Kind of everything is sort of quite informal. I mean, I have a group of sort of colleagues and friends who we mentor each other. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do a lot of work around, going into schools and talking to young women about science and careers in science. Although I don't know whether I might start getting disinvited for those things because, while lots of people see me as an advocate for women in science, in biology, we've got plenty of women coming through the pipeline. We've got plenty of young women who are really interested in doing biology, but we don't have quite so many senior women, and that's partly because, there's just so many things that essentially stop women from progressing or make them make the really good choice for them that this is not the right place, right?
Yes.
And so I often, when I talk about kind of a career in science, I warn young women of the sorts of things that if they came in today, they would be encountering. The sexism, the misogyny, all of those kinds of things.
Yes.
And I'm not sure whether teachers want to hear that, but I think it would be irresponsible to be encouraging young women to come into science, not warning them that this is not a safe environment for all of them right now. So I would like to do more to make this environment a better place.
Yes.
That's very hard.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing that I'm quite focused on now. How do we again make people behave better? How do we make it so that everyone has the opportunities and the likelihood that they will all succeed, rather than it being certain types of people?
Do you think it's because there is an uneven balance of male and female energy and representation in the industry?
Oh, absolutely, but it's partly because a lot of the ways that we reward success. I mean, it's sort of there's not only the ways we reward success, but also the biases and how decisions are made can be very, very detrimental to anyone who isn't an older white man.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Or following in the footsteps of a very senior white man.
I understand.
There's so much evidence of this all over the place about, who gets invited to speak at conferences, and that, people tend to invite from their networks. And then if when your networks are not particularly diverse, then the same sort of people start getting invitations. And those are the kinds of things that really count for promotion. So of course you'd be more likely to be promoted if you had those things. So there's just all sorts of little things. And I guess the upshot is that men and women are both sexist. So, and it's sort of like a social construct, right? That we have ideas about what men and women are supposed to do, about about who's supposed to be good at stuff. I mean, one of the things that I've really encountered is to do with my hair. So I've got lots of pink hair,
which is gorgeous.
And
yes,
I like it.
I like it too.
But it is a real barrier for some people, because
really?
they just cannot take me seriously as a scientist.
Right.
Because I don't look the part.
Right.
And what on earth has the colour of my hair got to do with my ability to do science?
Well, that is very similar to why I'm doing Giant Sisters and looking at the representation of the male to female ratio in movies and TV, and the amount of speaking that a female gets to do versus a male is like 30 to 70%. And as I understand completely what you're saying, and I'm hoping that we are going to build a kinder, more balanced world. So I 100% agree.
But it comes down to doing it with children.
Yeah.
Which is also really, really hard, right? Because, again, there's been some really great research showing that when you put adults in a situation where they are interacting with a child and like a whole bunch of toys, they'll be pushing the certain kinds of toys on the boys, and they don't even realize they're doing it.
Yes.
And they've done this great research where they basically put the children in different coloured clothes and then see how people react to them, whether they think it's a boy or a girl.
Right.
And, so these are the sort of social constructs that we have, that we have these inbuilt ideas, and we treat people differently. And that's a really hard thing to change. But it's the kind of thing we have to change, really.
Well, you're leading the way with your hair, and just challenging. Bring your full self to work, or bring your full self to the world. If everyone was doing that, I think the world would be better as well. So, Siouxsie,
yeah, I'd hope so.
Do you have any other new innovations or projects you're working on this year?
Yes, I do. It's a project that's been working on for about 18 months, and it's about to come to fruition.
Great.
So I won a prize a few years ago with a little pot of money to spend on doing some science communication. And what I've done with it is made a very short little series about microbiology for kids. Oh. But it's hosted by my daughter, Eve, who's 11. And it has just been such a fun thing to work with her.
Great.
So it's just been, it's been really fun. So there's just 4 episodes. Hopefully they're going to be out sort of online in the next month or so. And I'm really keen to see what kids think about it. All the sort of test shots we've done have been very successful. People have both grossed out and intrigued at the same time, which is what we set out to do.
Right.
And so what I'd like to do after that really is sort of come up with some resources that allow teachers to sort of use those to again teach sort of kids more about microbiology.
And where will the is this a video series? Where can we find them?
Yeah. We're just busy in negotiations at the moment. So I believe it's TVNZ are launching a new kids platform online, and so we're hoping it's going to be up on that. And if not, it'll be up somewhere online at some point.
Okay, great. And as we reflect here in New Zealand on our 125th year anniversary of suffrage, what are your thoughts on the current status quo here in New Zealand and around the world for the life and opportunities for girls and women?
Well, things are obviously better than they used to be, but they're not. They're not good enough yet.
Correct.
And again, I think it's we all have to be mindful about how we treat others and the biases that we have. It's not just about the differences in how we treat men and women, but the differences in how we treat people of different cultures and ethnicities.
Absolutely.
All of these kinds of things. We all have these biases in us, and we have to stop ourselves. And so I would hope that this is a year where we can sort of champion that. We need, a sort of a year for reflection, I guess, or sort of self-reflection. Like, what are our biases? How can we bring some of those to the fore, and how will we battle them on a daily basis so that we can be better people?
That's a wonderful end to this conversation. Thank you so much, Siouxsie. Lovely to talk to you.
And you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.